Welcome to Chapter 2 of my Fire Emblem Thracia 776 Ironman. This is a pretty lean chapter overall, both in terms of story and gameplay, because this is like what the first mission would be in most other Fire Emblems. You're just fighting bandits, and there's not much really of note. The boss is kind of tough, because for some reason bandit captains and bandit bosses in general are just really beefy in this game. But luckily you have two very, very powerful units, so it's not an issue. But if you go into it with the sort of mindset that you can, use like Eliwood to kill the boss if you want, then you're probably in for a bad time. I'm sure Finn can do it if you're patient. That's probably possible, but not really worth it. Because this chapter is so lean on text, there's not really much to report as far as the Japanese goes. There's nothing super like that was left behind in any of the translations, as far as I know. However, I do want to point out that this little part right here where Leif talks to Avel, if you somehow get Avel captured, which basically means you have to try to do that, like by unequipping her and then, leaving her in front of... Like, in the first mission, there's actually some units that Avel has more constitution or build than. So, you not only have to unequip her, but you actually have to find a unit that can capture her, because some of those soldiers are kind of dinky. But if you do get her captured, that little exchange between Leif and Avel takes place between Leif and Finn instead, and if you get Finn killed or captured, then Leif just kind of muses to himself. It's the same no matter what, pretty much. So I wouldn't recommend doing it just to see it unless you're obsessive about this game like I have been at times. But if I didn't mention it in the last chapter, Avel can't die in these first several chapters. She can be captured, but she can't die. And there is a hidden flag that allows units to be immune to capture as well, but Avel doesn't have that. She only has the invincibility flag. And in some of the patches, you can actually see this, and it's kind of nice for repeat playthroughs. When you want to play blind, you might go with this, or just like a more modest ROM. But if you are playing with the intent of maximizing your general playstyle and performance, it's kind of a neat feature, and you can see things like that. There is one boss in particular that recurs later on that has I think it's called the anchor effect in one of the English translations. So that's interesting. And the way that you get the Gaiden that comes up is basically you don't have to actually visit all of these villages, believe it or not. I don't think. I think they just have to survive. And once you win, you get to 2x, which is pretty much the most important Gaiden in all of Fire Emblem, or optional mission, or paralog, or whatever you want to call them. You get some pretty important characters that I'll talk about more once we get there. That it just ripples out throughout the whole game, just how important they are, especially one in particular. And if you've played this at all, you know exactly who I mean. If you're playing a Gaidenless run of this game, which I don't recommend, even if you really love this game, it's very painful, then you pretty much have to bypass this southern village and keep going and actually wait for the bandits to destroy the village. Not the one that's already destroyed in the cutscene, but this one that Avel's standing on right now. So you can actually bypass all of them and leave them for dead, and then seize the map too quickly and still get the guide. So if you are attempting that painful challenge, just be aware of that. And other than that, there's not a heck of a lot to talk about in this mission. You're just going to see Dagdar cut a swath through all of these guys. I mean, he can pretty much solo this entire map, I think. And mainly what's important isn't so much just clearing out all these guys, but just making sure you get the villages, not just to make sure that the bandits don't destroy them, but because you get a character in one of the villages, and I think they're one of the rings is in one of these villages, unless I'm confusing it with Chapter 1 or Chapter 3 or something. And I probably over-managed this chapter a little bit. Mainly I try to feed a lot of kills to Finn, just so he can get up around like level 9 just about, before the end of Chapter 3. And that's pretty easy to do, because I think just any playstyle is just going to lean heavily into Finn, just because he's so useful. He's the only mounted unit you have at the moment. He's powerful, he's great at capturing, and you naturally want to pair him up with Leaf, just because Leaf supports him. And here I get a fortuitous movement star, so I can get Ronan early. And the funny thing about Ronan is that once he spawns out here in a moment, he spawns on top of an impassable tile, rather than like just below, like he would if he were a character in pretty much any other Fire Emblem game. He would just come like straight out of the village. And there are these archers just above, or hunters I guess they're called a lot of the time in English games. But if those guys spawn with not enough strength or what have you, they won't even go for Ronan, because that little house tile or like wall tile or whatever it's called might give him too much defense, actually, so they won't even go for him. Luckily, in comparison to Fire Emblem 4, Genealogy of the Holy War, as it's known in English, there is like a hit floor and a hit ceiling. Your minimum hit rate, anyone friendly or enemy, no matter what you have equipped, no matter what's going on in terms of supports and everything, you'll always have at least 1% chance to hit. And the same is true inversely. You can only have up to 99 hit, no matter what. Unless you're talking about staff hit percentage, I believe that can go up to 100. So a couple things there. I'll just talk about what supports do. I think I mentioned them in Chapter 1. So, like, since we're over in kind of the Tanya Dagda section of things here, if Tanya, who is Dagda's daughter, is within 3 tiles away of Dagda, then Dagda will get he'll get hit percentage, critical, avoid, and maybe crit. It's like 2 of those 3, and I always kind of fumble it in my mind a little bit, but basically if any units support one another, which they usually tend to make sense, then you want to try and keep them together as long as they're deployed together. It doesn't mean that you have to always deploy, like say if you really love using Dagda and you always want to use him, it doesn't mean that you always have to deploy Tanya as well. Like, he'll still be functional without her, but if you do enjoy deploying everyone in a certain network of units, then that's just icing on the cake, really. Finn is supported by Leaf. Tanya is, I think, supported by her father in reverse. Not all supports are 2-way. You'll commonly hear people say that supports in Thracia are 1-way only. but that's a little bit misleading because plenty of characters do mutually support each other, but yes, by design, they're only one way, and many of them are one way. Like, for example, Avel, because she's Ashian and Halvin's, captain or whatever, or leader, she gives them bonuses to hit and avoid and everything, but it's not in reverse. Like, Ashian and Halvin don't give her bonuses. There is a character that does give her bonuses, but you don't get to pair them up much throughout the game. I think Leaf may give her a bonus, but I don't have all of them memorized. But this is hidden information in the games. You can look it up easily anywhere, but this is something that I think the game is intending you more or less to just feel out for yourself, and if those characters are giving each other bonuses, then great, but they don't want you thinking too much about it. Same with follow-up critical chance, which you can't see in the Japanese game, but you can see it in some of the patches that are out there. So that might be, depending on how you like to go about your gameplay, just in general, not just in Fire Emblem, you might consider that metagaming. And I kind of do, but at this point I can't forget those sorts of things. So I do think about them, and you can maximize your gameplay if you just think about those sorts of things. Here we're getting some Ronan action. His special characteristic is that he has an extra point of move, but on promotion he doesn't get that usual +1 move, so it's like he just gets it in advance. So that's like kind of cool and kind of sucky at the same time, depending on your personal point of view. Like, if you get excited for those promotional bonuses, then I guess it's kind of a letdown. And also, Ronan grows magic at quite a bit of a higher rate than most other physical units. If you look at like a giant page of everyone's growths, you'll notice that not just in this game, but in a lot of games, if you compare all the physical units, it's usually the female units that have slightly higher magical growths, or magic growths at all, for that matter. A lot of times the male units have like 0, and the female units might have like 5 or 10% actually. In this game at least, depending on the game, it might actually be higher, because some games just have sky-high growths for everything pretty much. This is a decent chapter for just, looking out for enemy inventories and capturing. Especially, I mean, you'll get a lot of axes, which are like, okay, there are a good number of axe units in this game. However, I don't know, axes aren't particularly exciting, especially when they give you some pretty powerful ones. But the vulneraries are pretty useful. It's not like they're rare. You can buy them in shops, but somehow I never see fit to set aside the time for going to shops just for vulneraries or whatever. So these guys here in the upper right are pretty much the last group of regular units that you'll encounter in this map, if you're going at like a reasonable pace, I should say. There's those guys at the bottom, which you can hang around and kill them, and they'll actually keep spawning in the bottom and top there. So you can farm them if you want. Fatigue isn't really an issue yet at this point in the game, so that's something you can do, but I generally don't do it. You'll end up clogging up your inventory anyway, and in 2 chapters away, 1 chapter by ordinal numbers, but 2 counting the guide, and you do have to do some inventory management, unless you're playing totally blind, in which case you'll have no idea and be completely blindsided. But in my case here, I don't want to have too much stuff rattling around, even though this is one of those Fire Emblems where they aren't jerks about the convoy. You can always send stuff to convoy. You don't have to throw stuff out, ever. One other thing of note is that this is one of those Fire Emblems where if you kill the boss, in this case, like, usually the person's sitting on the throne, but sometimes it'll just be like a freestanding guy, especially in this game. Then you stop reinforcements, but generally only for that faction. And this also affects other behaviors, like there's at least one mission where if you kill the boss of a certain faction, everyone in that faction will go for an escape point and become docile, even like Ballista, which is kind of nice. So that's something you can count on, especially in chapters like this, where it's really simple. Like, if you kill Bucks up here, then all of those bandits coming out of the water will stop. From this point out, the chapters are probably going to mostly get much longer. The next one is about the same length, I think. But some of the chapters will get up to like 40 minutes, maybe an hour at times. So I probably won't have as much non-stop commentary. And I'll adapt more of like a laid-back, just kind of watching the action approach. And I might provide some insight on why I did certain moves. Especially once, say, Chapter 4 starts, because that's when the game really starts to challenge you, and where deaths can really happen. I don't think I've ever lost a unit in any of these first 4 chapters, counting 2x. But I'm sure it'll happen someday, now that I've said that. But at any rate, I'll just let the last few minutes of the chapter play out without needless noodling around and just searching for things to say. So enjoy the rest of the video, and I will see you in Chapter 2, Gaiden.